Chapter 791, Taking the Children on a Camping Trip. The director quickly tugged at Lin Che and said, "Quick. Please come in, please come in. I'll talk to you about the details of this television series again." Behind them, the newbie immediately got anxious and frantically went up to them and said, "Director, we already agreed before this." "We? Hee. Look, it's not that we're not choosing you. It's because you're not as good as her. You will have other opportunities in the future. Of course, if you're willing, you can stay here and be the supporting actress. That's something that we can still consider." She was going to be a supporting actress instead of the main lead. Of course, she did not want to. In her moment of fury, she scoffed and simply left. She could only blame it on her bad luck. It had not been easy for her to obtain the lead role, but it had unexpectedly collided with Lin Che's comeback. After reaching an agreement with the director, Lin Che told Yu Minmin when she left, "I can't believe he trusts my acting skills so much. I haven't acted in a long time. He's not even scared that I will ruin it. All of us have a lot of faith in you. You won't ruin it, don't worry. As for that girl earlier, she has already been chosen. It isn't good for me to steal her role the moment I arrive," Lin Che said. Yu Minmin said, "I'll repeat the same sentence. No one can steal someone else's role. If you get your role stolen, it merely means that you're not capable enough. She hasn't reached that level of accomplishment yet. Anyone would choose you if she stood beside you. Whether it's your acting skills or your capability, either is better than hers. She can only acknowledge her bad luck." Lin Che said, "By the way, your relationship with Mr. President seems very good now." Lin Che's sudden mention of Gu Jingze made Yu Minmin lose her bearings. She hastily fiddled with her hair and looked at Lin Che. "I don't really get it either. But since he's willing to treat me well, I feel like we can continue living as a couple." She smiled and looked down with her lips pursed. It went without saying that her cheeks were flushed red. Lin Che looked at Yu Minmin and shook her head. "Oh no, what a big revelation. You've fallen in love with him." Yu Minmin froze and started to stutter. "What rubbish are you spouting? What love?" However, Lin Che said very resolutely, "You've definitely fallen in love with him. You're behaving just like a young girl who has just discovered love. But it's no wonder too. Mr. President is such a good person, it's not strange for you to fall in love with him after spending time with him every day." However, Yu Minmin felt a little disheartened. "In that case, but that's not supposed to happen. From the start, we were supposed to just conveniently use each other. What about now? Sometimes, how the relationship began isn't important. What's important is the way you feel now." "Now I can't explain it clearly either." Yu Minmin told her frankly, "It's true that he treats me very well and we're very happy together. His ex-girlfriend has another boyfriend too. We're just like an old couple spending time together every day and learning about each other's habits. When he doesn't want to talk, we'll stay in the study room and work separately and eat together when it's time to eat. When we lie in bed at night, we can even chat about each of our jobs and the people around us. What do you think this is? It's love, silly," Lin Che continued. "The two of you are doing much better than most married couples." Yu Minmin felt even more embarrassed, but her heart felt warm when she thought about it too. Before Lin Che had even spoken, she saw Gu Jingze's car appear at the door. Yu Minmin pushed Lin Che out. "That's enough. He has come to pick you up. Go out, quick." Lin Che looked outside. Had Gu Jingze installed some GPS on her? Why did he know her every move? Yu Minmin clicked her tongue twice. "He watches you too strictly. He follows you wherever you go." Lin Che pinched her nose and looked at Yu Minmin. "Humph, I won't talk to you anymore. I'm leaving first, bye." When they returned home, Mu Feiren was inside. She looked at Lin Che and asked, "By the way, we want to invite everyone on a camping trip before we leave. Can you make it?" "Camping?" Lin Che looked at Mu Feiren. "Why did you suddenly think of going camping? Didn't we previously promise to bring the two children camping? Since we're about to return to America now, we won't be able to go camping, so I want to fulfill their wish before we go back." Lin Che was reminded of the fact that Mu Feiren was returning to America. She put her arm around Mu Feiren's shoulders and felt slightly reluctant for her to leave. "Even while you're there, you must still come back often to visit me. I'll go over often to visit you too." "Don't worry, I definitely will," Mu Feiren said while patting her on the shoulder. Mu Feiran pondered for a bit before looking up. She looked at Gu Jingze opposite her and asked tentatively, "Does Mr. Gu want to come along as well?" Gu Jingze looked at Lin Che, who looked at him in turn. Gu Jingze did not want to go. Camping just sounded like a dirty affair. But Gu Jingze nodded his head in spite of it. When it came to Lin Che, he just could not reject her. Mu Feiran smiled and said to Lin Che, "That's great. I'll tell Union the good news." Lin Che said, "Since we're going camping, I'll ask 2 of my friends to come along. It would be more exciting and fun with more people too." "Of course, that's fine." Mu Feiran felt very regretful about the fact that although she had been immensely popular at the time, she had not made many friends because Mo Ding had watched her strictly and had not allowed her to make friends. Back then, Mu Feiran was a fool too. He said that people outside had ulterior motives and he was afraid she would be deceived by their tricks. She had actually believed him and thought that he was doing it for her own good. Now that she thought about it, perhaps he had stopped her from having too much contact with the outside world only because he was worried that she would gain too much knowledge and become difficult to control. Lin Che proceeded to call Shen Yoren and Yu Minmin. Of course, Shen Yoren agreed readily. She had 2 children, so naturally, she wanted to try camping as well. However, Yu Minmin felt that it was not appropriate for her to go since the rest of them all had children. Still, in the end, she agreed nonetheless because she did not want to miss out on their gathering. Then, Mu Feiran started to prepare the camping essentials in a detailed fashion. The 2 children were extremely happy. It was mainly because Union was very happy, so Ji Yushinian was definitely willing to cooperate. Mu Feiran looked at the 2 children in a very motherly manner while sitting there and making sandwiches. Union said, "Brother Nianian, I want to eat a few pieces of Kentucky Fried Chicken when we go camping. Can I?" Kentucky Fried Chicken contains acrylamide. Eating too much of it will cause cancer. You can't eat it. Alright then. Can I eat French fries then? You idiot, aren't French fries fried using oil too? Alright, Union stuck her tongue out. When Lin Che realized that he was bullying Union, she immediately slapped him. "Nianian, you're not allowed to bully Union." Ji Yushinian looked up adamantly. "Mother, aren't you being too biased?" "That's right, I am being biased. There's no helping it since you're the older brother and she's the younger sister. You must give in to your younger sister. Understand?" "Humph, you value women and belittle men," Ji Yushinian mumbled. The 2 children made Mu Feiran laugh. Mu Feiran asked, "We're so biased towards Union. Nianian won't have any trauma in the future, right?" Ji Yushinian said, "Forget it. I'm a man, I won't argue with you women." Chapter 792. The camping team suddenly grew so big. Mu Feiran laughed out loud at being treated as a woman and said to Lin Che, "Look at the little imp you gave birth to. Before this, I even wondered how exactly he was born to actually be so smart at a young age. Now, it seems he definitely didn't get it from you." She held her chin and glanced askance at Gu Jingze behind her. "He gives off the exact same feeling as your husband. His genes are truly too strong." Lin Che turned around and glanced at him in disbelief before turning back to scoff at Mu Feiran. She knew herself that this child really resembled Gu Jingze more. Even though she did not want to admit it, there was no way around it either. Lin Che sighed. After they finally finished preparing, they went out and saw that Shen Yoren and her family had driven here. As Shen Yoren's family was a family of 4, they had driven here in a small camping van. She waved while looking at them and smiled. She then said, come quick, come quick. Do any of the kids want to sit in our camping car?" Union immediately said, "Mother, I want to take the camping car." Mu Feiran said, "All right then. You guys go ahead. But you must take note of your safety when you're in the car." Chen Yucheng alighted from the car, closed the door and said, "President Ji Yu, I didn't expect you to be as enthusiastic as the rest today. You even came for the camping trip." Ji Jingze glared at him and could not be bothered to respond. Shen Yoren said, "Of course. If Lin Che wants to go, President Ji Yu will definitely go too." Chen Yucheng said, Fortunately, I didn't become a hen-pecked husband who agrees with whatever my wife says." "That's because you still aren't doing enough." Shen Yoren shook her fist vigorously at Chen Yucheng. When Mu Feiren walked out, Shen Yoren quickly walked towards her. Mu Feiren, ha ha ha, it's truly my honor to be able to go camping with the great Mu Feiren. Mu Feiren smiled and said, you have twins. How adorable. Shen Yoren said, they do look adorable, but in reality, they're just kings of destruction. Oh, this is your daughter, right? She looked down at Union. That adorable face really made her want to pinch it. Shen Yoren mumbled, she lives up to the name of Mu Feiren's daughter. Her genes are so good. She's too beautiful. It would be great if she could be my daughter-in-law in the future. Just then, Lin Che immediately cut in and asked, hey, what are you doing? Are you trying to steal her from me? I already reserved her as my daughter-in-law a long time ago. Shen Yoren said, hey, your son is going to be the great successor of the Gu family. He will have all the women he wants. Don't vie with our family, alright? Lin Che said, no way. I watched Union grow up since she was young. I came first and you came later. I think that none of those flirtatious sluts out there can compare to Union. Union is still the most adorable. Beside them, Gu Xinian watched the adults skeptically. When you guys are setting up arranged marriages for us children, can you first consider how we feel? Union did not understand. She looked up and asked with a completely innocent expression, Brother Nianian, what's an arranged marriage? The weather was bright and sunny. The children played about noisily early in the morning. The adults were also in better spirits as a result, especially when they heard the children's words. For a moment, they found them extremely interesting. Just then, Yu Minmin finally arrived as well. After leaving the car, she saw this blissful scene and momentarily felt that life seemed to have to become immensely joyful. Upon seeing Yu Minmin, Lin Che quickly looked up and waved. However, Yu Minmin smiled mysteriously and glanced behind her. Just when everyone was surprised, they saw the car door open only for Gu Jingming to unexpectedly alight. They were momentarily stunned. They had not expected Mr. President. What did Mr. President mean by this? Was he going camping with them? Mu Feiren frantically tugged at Lin Che and said quietly, what's happening? Initially, it was just the two of us taking our children camping. Why have things become like this now? Lin Che was confused as well and quickly said, sorry, Feiren. I didn't think. Mu Feiren smiled and patted Lin Che on her shoulder. Silly girl, what are you thinking? What I mean is that the scale of the trip has suddenly become so big. I'm a little overwhelmed by all this favor. In the beginning, it was us two and Gu Jingze. Now, even Mr. President is here. Is our camping trip going to become a state visit now? I just feel like I've amazingly traveled through time. I've never even met Mr. President, but right now, I'm actually going camping with him. Why is it so strange? Lin Che understood what she meant and said, to be honest, I haven't really interacted with Mr. President either. But you weren't like this when you first met Gu Jingze. You can just pretend that he isn't the president. Mu Feiren said, I was very surprised when I saw Gu Jingze too. But after being with you in America for a long time, I eventually got used to it, so I wasn't surprised when I met him again here. Yu Minmin came over and shrugged her shoulders discreetly at Lin Che. Lin Che made eyes at her and smiled before looking up and greeting Gu Jingming, who was walking over to them. Mr. President, good to see you. Gu Jingming said, didn't you always call me older brother in the past? Why are you calling me Mr. President? It sounds so distant. Lin Che smiled sheepishly. Back then, she was a newborn calf who was not afraid of tigers. However, she could not remain that way now. By this time, Gu Jingze was ready. He said to Gu Jingming, older brother, you're really free today. Gu Jingming looked at Yu Minmin over on the other side. Isn't it better to enjoy a little family fun when the time is right and to have a work-life balance? In the middle, Lin Che said, all right. Let's set off then. If there's anything to say, we can chat leisurely on the way. The location they had chosen was an hour away by car. The outskirts of B City were filled with mountains, streams, and open grass fields. From a distance, they could see people on an outdoor trip with their children. After stopping their cars, the children ran out happily and started playing while they made preparations and set up the tents. The men were all very good at setting up tents. The large and small tents were set up in an extremely professional manner. Looking at the tents, Mu Feiren said, men are just handsome when they're serious. She swept her gaze across the three men and said, especially when they were handsome, to begin with. Lin Che followed suit and looked over. Gu Jingze was dressed in a gray sweatshirt and sneakers. His attire was the same as any other typical traveler on the street. However, the feeling he gave off in those clothes was completely different. He looked as good as always, making people instinctively want to gasp in awe. The creator was so unfair in letting this man have all the good things in this world. Sensing the situation, Yu Minmin reached out her hand and waved in front of her. You're so smitten. Go home and look at your husband if you want to. What are you looking at here? She had been discovered. She hastily regained her senses and smiled shamelessly, saying, if you're not happy about it, you can also look. Tisk. I'm not as infatuated as you are. You still haven't had enough after looking at him for so many years. Lin Che merely glared at her. Since the tents had already been set up, Lin Che walked over to them and hastily seized the chance to jump out of the car and look at the tents that they had set up. Chapter 793. Mr. President finally said his thoughts. The tent was huge and it had just enough space to fit 2 adults. A few kids gathered into one tent to sleep. They slept in the middle with a few adults around them so they could enjoy themselves to their heart's content. Everyone was busy preparing food and water. The passers-by who saw them could not help but shoot envious glances at them. Yu Minmin was trying to get water. She glanced outside and told some people, there's spring water over there. I will go get some for drinking. Alright, but be careful, Mu Feiren said. Gu Jingming heard her and got up together as well. I will go with you. Yu Minmin turned around and looked at him meaningfully. Both of them set off and were admiring their surroundings as they walked. Yu Minmin smiled gleefully as she admired the scenery and she turned to look at his face which was as beautiful as the scenery. She always felt very happy to be able to stay by his side. All these years, they spent every day with each other and shared the nights together. The life that he gave her was something she never had before. She led a life filled with hardships since she was young where she had to always worry about survival, but ever since she got together with him, her life had completely changed. Although he was very overbearing and at times aloof, she felt very contented. However, there were still times that she was afraid that she might lose everything she had. She felt that the kind of life she was leading would pass away eventually. But she could not imagine how life would be without him. After all, when they just got together, they agreed to not interfere with each other's matters, but now, they had been so involved in each other's lives. The two of them were too familiar and used to each other and this made her feel lost. How did he feel? Gu Jingming could feel that Yu Minmin was staring at him. He turned around to look at her. What's the matter? Are you tired of walking? Do you want to take a break? Oh, no, it's not that. We just started walking. It's not tiring. How about I piggyback you? Huh, forget it, forget it. What will the others think when they see that? Yu Minmin avoided in a moment of fluster. Gu Jingming seemed to have felt her rejection and that made him a little upset. He did not like it whenever she tried to avoid him as if he was a very intimidating person. Even though they had been together for a very long time and both of them were used to interacting with each other in this way, but it still made him unhappy. He put his arms around her shoulder and looked at her. What's the matter? Does it make you uncomfortable when I say that I want to piggyback you? Of course not. Yu Minmin just felt that he was the president and it would be too much a prank if he were to piggyback her. Gu Jingming did not think that way. He narrowed his eyes and it made him look even more threatening. He walked on, looking very upset. Yu Minmin did not know how she had offended him, but still went after him and hit him lightly on the shoulder. Gu Jingming, what's wrong with you? Gu Jingming stretched out his hand to brush her aside. Unexpectedly, Yu Minmin tripped over a rock and her entire body fell backward. She fell with a loud thud. Gu Jingming immediately turned around and saw Yu Minmin on the ground. He rushed over anxiously to grasp her body and held her up. How are you feeling? Where did you get injured? Yu Minmin pushed him away with annoyance. She was fuming mad. Let go of me. I'm sorry. Gu Jingming grabbed Yu Minmin's arm and looked at her. I did not do it intentionally. Yu Minmin knew that his apology was sincere, but his expression still appeared to be cold and aloof. He was not good at expressing his sincere look. Yu Minmin turned her face to the other side. It doesn't matter whether you did it intentionally. Let go of me. I can walk on my own. Minmin. Gu Jingming called out her name and gazed at her. Don't reject me, okay? Yu Minmin looked at him. I'm sorry, I'm not your puppet. I'm a human, and humans know how to reject something and not just listen blindly to your commands. Gu Jingming's expression twitched and his gaze seemed a little different. He was taken aback to hear her say that. Minmin, do you always think that you are a puppet? I'm not trying to order you around, I'm just. You are just used to giving orders, I know. Yu Minmin called out to him and interrupted his words. She got up and patted her clothes to get rid of the soil. She took up the bottle and continued to walk on stubbornly. Gu Jingming stared at her back and after a long time, he went after her. Yu Minmin was pulled back by his grip. He grabbed her shoulders such that she would be facing him. Yu Minmin could not take it any longer. She shouted, Gu Jingming, that's enough. I have already said it. I don't want to be forced to do anything. What do you want? If you really love puppets that much, then go and get an inflatable doll. Don't take it all on me, okay? After she finished lashing out at him, Yu Minmin saw the tense expression on Gu Jingming's face. Then, she suddenly remembered the person standing before her was the great president of Sea Country. He was the most popular president of Sea Country in recent years. He held power in his hand to rule over the entire nation. He was always high and mighty in position. Nobody dared to go against him. Besides them, some people were there to play and sightsee and they noticed the quarrel between them. Yu Minmin quickly turned her head around. She thought to herself, was she trying to get herself in trouble? What breaking news that would be if someone saw that the two people who were quarreling turned out to be Gu Jingming and Yu Minmin. Fortunately, they did not pay much attention to both of them. They had also not realized that the person standing there was Mr. President who appeared on the news every day. She wanted to retract those words, but that was impossible. She knew that he would be able to deal with her as easy as dealing with an ant. But these words have already come out of her mouth. Perhaps she was getting a little fearless lately. She did not realize that she now had the guts to speak to Gu Jingming in that way. Meanwhile, Gu Jingming held her hand and lowered his head to look at her. He talked slowly with a deep and sincere voice, I'm sorry. Did I make you feel like you were an inflatable doll all the time? Feeling a little awkward, Yu Minmin lowered her head. I didn't mean that. Gu Jingming gripped her wrist forcefully. I command you to tell me your honest thoughts now. Yu Minmin raised her head to look at this tall man. She stood before him and he looked as if he was charging forward, and that made her feel a little frightened. All right, I just felt that the way you control me is like how you treat a doll you like. You hope that I live the way you want, but in that way. Gu Jingming found it amusing and laughed. Then, he took in a deep breath and gazed at Yu Minmin lovingly. I'm not, Minmin. In the beginning, I did want to make you mine. I wanted you to only listen to me and not do things that may cause trouble for me. That was because when I first saw you and during the multiple times we interacted thereafter and the few times before we got married, I felt that you are a very firm person, very independent, and you want to live your life the way you want. Chapter 794. He confessed to her that he wanted to be with her. Gu Jingming placed both his hands on her shoulder. Looking into her eyes, he said, I felt that if I did not control you this way, you would go out of control and create lots of trouble for me. But then, I realized that your life in the past had been too simple. It only revolved around making money, survival, avoiding debts and repaying your father's debts. For a woman, these should not have appeared in her life. I just felt like your life in the past had been too simple and dark, so I hope to change your life. Maybe I went overboard with what I did and I had not spared a thought for you. I admit that I was not used to looking at certain problems from other people's perspectives. Yu Minmin looked at him in astonishment. This overbearing man had just confessed his heartfelt thoughts for the first time, and this made Yu Minmin utterly shocked. Was he admitting his mistakes? Was he saying that he cared for and was protective over her and that was why he wanted to change her? Although this method was too overbearing, at that moment, Yu Minmin could not bring herself to hate him. Yu Minmin's thoughts were all over the place. She was so angry a while ago, but at that moment, she was very moved. I am not strongly against it, it's just that I did not want to be controlled by you all the time. I know that you have your reasons for doing so, but I wish that you can tell me the reasons. I don't wish to be controlled and ordered around by you for no reason. Besides, we have agreed from the very beginning that we will not interfere with what each other is doing. Yes, we have agreed on this from the very start. He inched closer to her. Lowering his head, he held her face in his hands and the rough thumb brushed against her face. In the beginning, I had also thought that way. As long as we don't interfere with each other's matters, everything is fine. However, I cannot wash my hands off your matters. I wanted to get involved in your matters slowly because I don't wish to see someone else occupying an important position in your life. I want to be your everything. His deep gaze landed on her. In the deep woods, his gaze was more blinding than anything else and they were filled with affection. His eyes met hers and it made her feel that when this usually stern man showed his gentle side, he became more sexy and good-looking. He exuded a different aura compared to previously and it had stirred up her heart. Yu Minmin felt like she could no longer take his gaze anymore. Her heart was beating so fast that it felt like it was going to jump out of her anytime soon. Yu Minmin asked, "But why? I don't think I did anything." "No, you have done a lot. You are always by my side. Without a word, you always sit across me and when I lift up my head, I will see you right away and this made me very happy. You were very strong when you followed the ships from S City to the island. The first moment I saw you when I woke up, I thought that you were really very silly. It was so dangerous and you were only a Mrs. President in name then and you were carrying our child at that time too. When the child died, I felt that I owed you too much. You should be the first lady of Sea Country. You are but I have always denied it. Actually, when I first saw you, you left a deep impression on me. I was just too worried that I will plunge right into your world, so I kept holding back." He narrowed his eyes and sighed in worry. "The more I wanted to hold back, the closer we became. Therefore, I wanted to change you but that's a dead end and I even plunged myself into your world. Besides your body is a treasure with endless mysterious, I could not control myself whenever I see you always could not help it." Why did Yu Minmin feel that with all that he just said, the last part of it was the main reason? Gu Jingming lowered his head. Closing up to her, he bit her lips and kissed her wildly. Her smell made him crave for more and he was no longer satisfied in her lips alone. Sticking out the tip of his tongue, he pried her lips open and sucked once. The wet touch stirred up his heart. His tongue soon lost control and swept across in her mouth violently. Her tiny tongue avoided his but he adamantly wrapped his tongue over hers. He kissed her so fiercely that she felt as if she was losing her mind. They could feel the moisture of each other's lips. He was absorbing her warmth and was craving for more. He hugged her closer and tightly towards and his brows furrowed. It was so soft and it made him lose control. This woman looked so prim and proper with her clothes and it gave him the urge to tear away that pretense. After taking off her clothes, she had a beautiful, young face with soft bosom and it made her irresistible. He pushed her clothes aside to slip his hand in. In a shock, she dropped what was in her hands. The bottle fell onto the ground. Even though they were out in the wild, it was still easy to be discovered by people. Yu Minmin said in a flustered tone, "All right, let go of me. Someone will see us." Gu Jingming did not raise his brow. He looked around unhappily to see if there was any cover around but he could not find any. Inching closer to her, he said, "We'll talk about this when we return." Gu Jingming extended his hand to help Yu Minmin tidying her clothes. Yu Minmin lifted her head to look at this handsome man. She felt that everything that happened a moment ago was like a dream. It felt very magical. Looking up to him, she asked, "So now, am I truly the first lady?" He lowered his head and looked at her. Then, he kissed her forehead. "As long as I'm the president, you are the first lady of Sea Country. Even if I step down from the position one day, you will always be my first lady." This sentence was just Yu Minmin was bursting with happiness when she heard that. The way Mr. President said those cheesy things it made her feel like her world had turned all around. However, she loved this feeling and she loved his loving gaze. She looked at him and realized that she just loved watching him like that. He was as dashing as ever all the time. However, looking at him again, it just made her feel proud. She laid in his embrace, wishing the moment to last a little longer, and a little longer. She had no intention of returning to the tents anymore. She just wanted to spend more time with him alone and to take a closer look at his extremely handsome face. Everyone was playing very happily. The kids splashed water onto Lin Che and she was drenched. Lin Che had no choice but to return to the tent to change her clothes. While she was getting changed inside, she realized her clothes and bra strap were tangled together and she could not separate them. At that moment, the tent was pulled open. Lin Che hurriedly covered herself. She lifted her head and her eyes met Gu Jingze's deep eyes. He seemed to be shocked as well. Then, he saw that her clothes tangled together behind her. He crawled into the tent and said, "Don't move. I will help you." Chapter 795. Gu Jingze apologized to her in the tent. Lin Che's face blushed. She saw that her bosoms were half exposed and her hair was in a mess. She was not properly covered and he was going to see her naked. Don't need to wear anything. Are you going to continue talking to me while looking like this? Gu Jingze laughed and looked at her. His teasing look made Lin Che felt even more awkward. She definitely did not mean it that way. Gu Jingze pulled her body over with one hand and made her sit on his lap. What are you doing? It was okay to help, but why did he need to touch her? Gu Jingze hushed her by her ear. Don't move. It's very uncomfortable for me to be sitting. Be careful so that we won't tear the tent. Otherwise, everyone outside is going to see you like this. Lin Che turned her head and nodded. She noticed that he was really sitting in a very uncomfortable position in the tent. Because he was very tall and the size of the tent was catered to the build of an average person. It was already very uncomfortable for him while lying down and it was even so when he sat in the tent. Lin Che remarked, "Quickly help me then." "Yes, madam," he laughed as he replied to her. He was very focused on helping her untangle the clothes but looking at the dead knots, he sighed and said, "Only you have the skills to tie it that way and get yourself landed in this state." He helped her with the clothes and it was finally undone. However, as he lowered his head, he saw her bosoms beneath her clothes. He could not help but his hands began to move slowly. He kept his eyes fixed on her chest and the corners of his lips were lifted upward. Lin Che realized that he had stopped moving. She turned around and caught him staring at her body. Her face grimaced and blushed. She gestured violently before him. "Gu Jingze, you, where are you looking at?" She threw a punch at him but he subconsciously dodged it and she missed it. However, her body was thrown forward and landed on his body. Her lips knocked on his collarbone and the clashing of her teeth against the bone caused her mouth to bleed. She cried out in pain. "Don't move." Gu Jingze hurriedly stopped her. With one hand, he lifted her face. He frowned as he took a look at her mouth. Then, he said plainly, "We should disinfect it with saliva. I will lick it." Disinfect? Was he sure that he was trying to help her to disinfect? She had her own saliva and she did not need his at all. He held her face in his hands and his tongue quickly found its way into her mouth. Followed by a passionate kiss. As she was lying on top of his body, she could feel the heat emitting from his body. Below, she felt something against her body. What a fiery kiss, it had evoked the human desire. Narrowing his eyes, he frowned deeply and let go of her immediately. Panting, he lowered his head to look at it which had stood upright in the middle. He could not help it. He said, "Be good and wear the clothes yourself. I'm going out first." "Hey." Lin Che grabbed Gu Jingze who was about to turn and leave the tent. "How are you going to leave like this?" She looked at his lower body with something standing in the middle. She knew that it would take a while for it to shrink. She wondered if it was huge for every man but she had thought that his was extremely enormous. Besides, looking at his ability, it would take a long time for it to shrink. Gu Jingze breathed in deeply and his face was filled with helplessness towards her. He turned around and pulled her body closer to him. Facing her ear, he went in for a light peck on her ear and said, "If you are not willing, I will not touch you at all. Lin Che, I know that I have let you down and did many wrong things but I will not let go of you. Even though I know that you had suffered a lot while being together with me, I'm still selfish and I don't want you to leave me." Lin Che's heart trembled. She felt the tinge of sorrow that was in his voice and it made her heart ache so much. It seemed incredulous but that was the truth. Lin Che said, "That's enough, Gu Jingze." Gu Jingze looked at her. His eyes and heart were filled with her. His heart ached for her and he felt very sorry towards her. He said, at that time, I had really thought of leaving everything behind, getting a plane ticket, and flying over to your side many times. But I was not courageous enough to go. I admit that I'm a person of very extreme ends. As long as I make up my mind on something, I will not turn around unless I hit one end. I had decided to make everything here mine before bringing you back, so I have to do it. Although it had caused me to suffer so much, I did not regret it. Lin Che, I'm sorry. I know that it had been very tough on you for these few years. When you were upset, there was nobody by your side. You gave birth to our child alone. You are very strong and brave. The better you are, the more guilty I feel. She had never thought that she would cry when she returned. However, at that moment, when she heard him say that she was brave and strong, she could not hold it back any longer and tears suddenly burst forth from her eyes. There was nothing to be afraid of whether it was giving birth alone or living by herself. What was frightening was that she was always worried that she would never see him in her life again. Tears flowed out from her eyes. Those sparkling eyes were even more beautiful when they were wet. The tears were as beautiful as pearls, yet they were like needles at the same time that pierced directly through his heart. He did not wish to see her cry at all. He knew she had suffered a lot and she was very vulnerable. He knew that she should let it all out when she wanted to cry, but to him, watching her cry was worse than getting shot by someone. It was a very strange feeling, and that uncomfortable feeling was so real, yet he could not do anything about it. He hurriedly put his arms around her shoulder and she hit him angrily. This man was so terrible to have made her cry. He was too mean. He hugged her and felt her tears dripping on his shoulders. He caressed her hair and fixed it. It was all my fault. It was me. Lin Che said, in the beginning, have you thought that you will let me leave for such a long time? She asked him. Gu Jingze shook his head. I thought that the longest I would take was a year, but my grandfather was too guarded and he was very powerful. I spent many years trying to get rid of his influence on the company little by little and made his officials loyal towards me. He knew that although he was the biggest shareholder, nobody would listen to him already, and he eventually gave his shares to me. He put it across so simply, but she thought to herself, only he knew how many hardships he went through in the process. It was not easy at all. These years, she had also read many books related to the economy. She knew that for such a big family, there were many complicated relations in it. For the shares of a company, there were so many ways to secure them. She asked again, did you really think of going to look for me? I had that thought every day, he said without hesitation. Chapter 796, Displaying Affection Just After Breaking the Ice. She asked, have you really thought about going to find me then? Every day, he replied without hesitation. Did you miss our child? No. Lin Che looked up at him. He said, I only miss you. She asked speechlessly, how can you be such a father? Gu Jingze replied, I don't want to waste any of my thoughts about you on someone else, not even for our child. Because of his teasing, her tears could not flow. She released his shoulders and could not hold back her smile as she looked at him. Tell me, how much sweet talking did you learn over the years? How is every sentence you say so smooth? Who did you learn from? Leniency to those who are frank and strict punishment to those who resist. Gu Jingze bent down and touched the tip of her nose with his own. I didn't learn it from anyone. It's just that for each time I thought about you, I'd think about what I would say to you. The hand gradually accomplishes what the heart wishes. Oh my, oh my, oh my, Lin Che looked at him in surprise. He still had the cheek to claim that he had no practice. These sweet words were so fluent now. It was as if Lin Che's heart was smothered by a layer of honey now. Furthermore, this honey was from Gu Jingze, making it sweeter by a ton. However, she thought that Gu Jingze might have been telling the truth. He used to say the same things, but it was absolutely not this sweet. It must have been because he kept it all inside him for so long that he would say it out now. She looked at him, and at that moment, all her anger seemed to have dissipated. She said, actually, I'm not very angry either. I know, he said as he hugged her. If she was truly angry, she wouldn't have been prepared to stay. She said, but you have to make it up to me. He looked at her. What do you want? I can't think of anything at the moment. Lin Che didn't have anything she wanted now. He replied, if you really can't think of anything, then forget it. Upon hearing this, she panicked and hastily said, no, no. Give me the money then. I want a lot of money. Humph. This is so that if you abandon me again, I wouldn't want you by then. I'll be a rich lady and have a few gigolos. I'll have plenty of freedom then. Gu Jingze knew that she was not truly angry now since she was starting to ask for money. However, her motive for wanting money was a little too. His face darkened. Then, he thought of something and said to her, okay. When you become rich, I'll also be your gigolo. I'll definitely be the strongest and most energetic. I'll make you feel so good that you'll still choose me in the end. He had the cheek to talk about that. He asked, why are you so disgusted? Surely people would want a gigolo like me. Indeed, even if he was not Gu Jingze, with his looks and his irresistible skills he could absolutely be the top gigolo. However, she had to attack him a little more. Forget it, a gigolo at your age. The ones getting picked now are all 17 or 18-year-olds. That is the tender age. Gu Jingze's face turned dark once again. Fine, Lin Che. 17 or 18-year-olds, is it? I'll let you experience how much time a guy at that age has today. As he spoke, he pressed his body down on her and bit her earlobe vengefully. No, there are people outside, Lin Che quickly exclaimed. Gu Jingze took another bite and licked her with a vengeance. He felt Lin Che withdraw slightly. He had clearly hit a sensitive spot and invoked a strong reaction in her. He then released her and patted her clothes. Alright, let's go out. Lin Che glared at him hatefully. Don't forget my compensation. Yes, I'll give it to you back home. Gu Jingze replied generously. Outside, the weather was nice and refreshing. Mu Feiran sat on the edge of the tent. Chen Yucheng saw Gu Jingze and Lin Che returning with smiles and laughter. It looked like the ice was already broken and there was no longer a distance between them. He immediately sighed and blew at the dagger in his hand. Just wait and see, she's going to be tortured again today. Shen Yoren looked up and saw the two of them. Although they were not holding hands, their shoulders brushed past each other. Gu Jingze looked relaxed while Lin Che had the same infatuated look for Gu Jingze once again. Immediately, she understood that Lin Che was not going to kick up a fuss anymore. Chen Yucheng sighed and said pitifully, she's forgiving President Gu just like this. Your best friend has too big of a heart. Shen Yoren grunted and replied, of course. She has to forgive him even if only by looking at his face. What else is she supposed to do? Give up this role to some other woman just because of a matter like this? Absolutely not. Even if she's willing to, we won't agree to it. Mu Feiran watched the couple walk towards them. They looked very casual, but there was a very natural atmosphere surrounding them. It was as if they had plenty of chemistry even if they did not have to say or do anything. They did not have to waste any time arguing. This kind of feeling was indeed very different from before. Looking at the couple, they really seemed to have already become one harmonious picture. They made the outdoor scenery look even more beautiful. What are you guys talking about? Why are you all staring at me? Lin Che approached them and asked. Chen Yucheng said, I was wondering what exactly President Gu did in such a short time in the tent. You came out looking so radiant. I had thought that it was something more substantial, but it was not even half an hour. That would be too quick for President Gu's usual duration. Lin Che looked at Shen Yoren and exclaimed, isn't there anyone to reel him in? What is this? Shen Yoren pouted, he's too much to handle. Not every man is as doting to his wife as Gu Jingze. I'm always serving the one in my home. How can I reel him in this time? Hey, since when have you served me? How come I don't remember? Shen Yoren flared up and said, idiot, can't you be more cooperative? Everybody laughed. Just then, Gu Jingming also returned with Yu Minmin. Gu Jingming tugged Yu Minmin along. She still looked rather lethargic. What happened? What took you guys so long? Yu Minmin replied, I fell. It's no big deal. Oh my, if I didn't know you fell, I would have thought that it was this wild beast. This time, Shen Yoren shot a look at Chen Yucheng who was spouting gibberish. For Mr. President to be in the wild and do that, it would be crazy. Just then. Oh my, there's a fire. What's going on there? It's on fire. In the distance, some tourists were yelling and the group immediately noticed. Sure enough, thick, black smoke was already coming out from over there. Gu Jingze remembered something and stood up. Nianian is over there. They then recalled that the children indeed went over there. Chapter 797. These two are destined to be together. The few of them quickly walked over. They could see that a place had indeed caught fire. It was obviously caused by someone setting the wood on fire. Gu Jingze stood there as he scanned the area. Nianian was not there. Lin Che's eyes swept across the place and immediately said, Nianian, it must have been caused by this naughty child. I just knew it. As long as he's around, there won't be peace. Shen Yoren said, oh my. Where could they have gone then? They shouldn't be injured. At this point, Gu Jingze already called for help. Some guests wanted to rush over and help put out the fire. However, they saw some bodyguards dressed in black making their way over from afar. In no time, they extinguished the fire and then continued putting out the remaining embers. Mu Feiren patted her chest fearfully and said, thank goodness. Thank goodness everything is okay. But Gu Jingze is really charming. So many men came over and instantly put the fire out. The guests and I are all stunned. Yu Minmin held her hand against her forehead and asked, what is going on? Where are those kids? The group quickly turned around to look for the children. Just then, a bodyguard already brought the children over. First in line was naturally Gu Xinian. Behind him was a blurry-looking Union with dirt on her face. Two other children followed at the back, Chen Yan and Chen Ju. They had absolutely no clue what happened and were looking at these adults in puzzlement. Lin Che quickly ran over. Gu Xinian, what did you do this time? Nianian put up his hands. Mama, if I told you that the wood caught fire on their own, would you believe me? Lin Che gritted her teeth angrily and could not be bothered with him. She turned directly to Union. Union, be a good girl. Tell me what happened. Union looked up at Nianian and said, Auntie, you cannot blame brother. Brother said a magnifying glass can burn things. Lin Che turned her head to Gu Xinian. Gu Xinian, you're grounded. You actually took these little kids with you to play with fire. Are you asking for a death wish? Gu Xinian sighed, how long will it be this time? For a moment, Shen Yoren felt that her children were really only just a little playful. At least they didn't cause trouble. The campers apologized to the management of this forest. Lin Che took Gu Xinian to apologize. They were followed by Gu Jingze and Gu Jingming. The manager was so shocked and could only say, just don't do it again next time. It's fine. Lin Che said, that won't do. Nianian, you have to write a review for the manager here. Nianian asked, how many words do I have to write? The manager hastily said, it's okay, it's okay. Lin Che replied, no, he has to do it. Children need to admit to their mistakes and learn from them. The manager chuckled and said, as expected from a prestigious family. So logical. Alright, go ahead with the review. You can write as much as you want. He thought that if the child grew up to be somebody one day, he could display the review. Seeing Mr. President behind, he also knew that this child would not be average. He was definitely going to be an important figure one day. They stayed here for one more night. In the morning, Gu Jingming left first to handle some state affairs. Yu Minmin was taken away by him and everyone packed their own belongings. Camping was very refreshing, but a night in a sleeping bag left Lin Che with an aching back. She felt as if her back was going to break. Sure enough, some things sounded very nice, but when actually done, one would realize that it was still better at home. Gu Jingze helped Lin Che out. He looked at her as they walked. Does it still hurt? Lin Che nodded furiously and said exasperatedly, my back aches the most. I feel like it's going to break. She was really not exaggerating. She had never felt such ache before. The strange thing was that everyone else seemed to be fine. Even Gu Jingze. She was in his embrace the entire night and hugging his body to sleep. However, he appeared full of energy now and it was as if his body was completely fine. Why was she so unlucky? Was she really that weak? Shen Yoren looked at her and nudged her playfully. Haha, what did you do at night that you can't get up today? Lin Che glared angrily at the teasing Shen Yoren. Shen Yoren. You must have done something yourself. I'm not as dirty as you, humph. Oh my, you're denying it. President Gu, you see this? Is your wife lying? In a state like this, it would have been at least an hour, right? Shen Yoren was really brazen to ask Gu Jingze such a direct question. However, Gu Jingze was clearly in a good mood today. Gu Jingze looked at Lin Che blankly and then at Shen Yoren. Lin Che shot a look at him. Gu Jingze plainly turned back. Whatever my wife says, goes. He sounded so aggrieved and unwilling. It was as if he did not dare to say anything and he was forced to say that. Furthermore, the words came out of Gu Jingze's mouth. He made it extra lethal. Shen Yoren immediately gave in. She tugged Mu Feiren along with her and said, let's go or else we might get abused. There's already a wave of mushiness coming over. We'll get hit if we don't leave. Lin Che placed her hands on her hips and watched the two of them leave. She turned to Gu Jingze and said speechlessly, it's all your fault. What nonsense are you talking about? Gu Jingze looked innocent. Wasn't what I said the truth? What I meant was that you were right. That was clearly not the meaning. Idiot, you only know how to bully me. She reached out to hit him, wanting to take revenge on his innuendo. However, the moment she moved, she yelped in pain. Her back hurt. This was simply self-inflicted torture. Gu Jingze quickly supported her waist. Once he got hold of her, he said, all right, stop moving. Let me do it. How did this sound like an innuendo too? She felt as if she had been tainted by them. Stop moving. Nobody was moving anything. As her thought ran wild, Gu Jingze already carried Lin Che on his back. He held her legs in front while she rested on his stable back. Lin Che clung onto his neck. It indeed felt much nicer not having to walk on her own. But would this be too tiring? There were uphills and downhills and it was a dirt path. This route was too rugged. Well, I think you should put me down. I can walk on my own, Lin Che said. You just need to support me. Gu Jingze tilted his head slightly and glanced at her. Any problems with the back is not a small problem. It's better to be careful. This back I have not gotten enough of it. She was going to make him carry her like this. He had such a filthy mouth. She had to tire him out so that his lower body would be incapacitated. That would stop him from spouting any more nonsense. Chapter 798. Some people's relationships are destined to be rocky. Gu Jingze carried Lin Che on his back so effortlessly as always. His long legs were quite visible as he steadily caught up with the others in front of him. Shen Yoren turned around and saw them. They were already this intimate. She couldn't help but look enviously at Lin Che. Gu Jingze was too nice. He had no complaints on his face and his obviously strong back did not show any signs of weakness when carrying Lin Che. Instead, it gave one an overwhelming sense of security and stability. She nudged Chen Yucheng beside her. Just take a look at others. Chen Yucheng turned his head to look and immediately wanted to weep. He was eager for them to continue on their Cold War. He couldn't quite get used to this sudden intimacy now. What? She is injured. Humph, I'm hurt too, Shen Yoren said in contempt. Chen Yucheng looked at her but did not see any physical injury. Where are you hurt? Shen Yoren held her chin. My teeth hurt. It was inflamed yesterday. You see, it's swollen. Chen Yucheng grunted. I'll carry you when you walk with your teeth. Get lost. Shen Yoren started hitting Chen Yucheng. Mu Feiren was in front watching as she tugged Union along. Union looked up at Mu Feiren. Mommy, why are they fighting? Mu Feiren smiled and caressed her obedient daughter. Because they get along well. Union asked, why must they fight when they get along well? I get along well with brother Nianian too, but we never fight. Mu Feiren's heart soured. It was all because Union never saw her own parents interacting, so she did not understand all these. No matter how she loved Union, she would still lack in this aspect. Thinking about it, she felt very guilty. However, at this moment, Mu Feiren's phone rang. She looked to see that it was a call from a stranger. Thinking that it was a courier, she picked it up. However, the voice she heard belonged to a girl. Sister Feiren, it's been a while. Why didn't you come to look for me now that you're back in C Nation? It was Gu Jingze. Mu Feiren was stunned and she stopped in her tracks. All these years, she had cheated Mu Feiren plenty of times. She always pretended to be a gentle, adorable, kind and good-mannered lady. However, she ganged up with others to take full advantage of Mu Feiren behind her back. She treated Mu Feiren like a fool. You still have the cheek to call me Gu Jingze, you got everything you wanted. Before you get your retribution, take the chance to enjoy what you have. Stop wasting your time with me. If she sincerely loved Mo Ding and was a true friend who was apologetic, Mu Feiren could still accept it. However, she actually stabbed Mu Feiren in the back using the status of a close friend. Plotting, scheming, using her things, spending her money and probably insulting her behind her back. Mu Feiren was really a fool. Just the thought of it sent chills down Mu Feiren's spine. Gu Jingze said, Sister Feiren, how can you say that? What have I gained? I have catered to you for so many years. Is it wrong to want a little something in return? It's like this. There's a wealthy businessman who wants to meet you. Dream on. In the past, she tried to get Mu Feiren to go to these gatherings in various ways. A gathering like this could cost hundreds of thousands of yuan. It was extremely profitable, but Mu Feiren did not agree. Gu Jingze laughed. Sister Feiren, don't be so quick to reject me. If not for yourself, think about your daughter. We'll split the money equally. How good is this business? Haven't you had enough? My daughter will not use this kind of filthy money. At the side, Shen Yoren already walked over and was looking at her strangely, wondering what was going on. Gu Jingze continued, Fine. Since you refuse a toast only to drink a forfeit, let me tell you this. Mu Feiren, you have no choice. If you don't come, I'll leak the news about your daughter everywhere. I'll even reveal the truth behind your marriage with Mo Ding and how you became a whore who gave birth to a bastard. I'm not like Mo Ding who still cares about his reputation and doesn't want to ruin the art he has cultivated. He doesn't want to ruin your reputation because he still wants to continue using you. However, if you don't accommodate me, I'm not going to care about how people are going to look at you. Even if both you and your daughter are ruined, I will absolutely not care. Do you understand? Mu Feiren never thought that she would be so ruthless. How much did she hate Mu Feiren to be able to do such a thing? Mu Feiren scoffed coldly, Does Mo Ding know about this? Of course not. Why? Do you want to tell him? Go ahead. I just want to see if he will believe you or me. Ha ha ha. Mu Feiren, I'll be waiting for your call tonight. If you don't, you'll wait and see. Don't think that I won't dare to. She put down her phone. Shen Yoren asked in surprise, Who was that? She sounded so arrogant. Mu Feiren looked into the distance as if remembering this vicious woman and how she treated herself. She thought about how she was driven out of Mo Ding's house and the woman even pointed at her, calling her a whore and that she deserved it. It was all so vivid. The worst part was that she used to treat her as a close friend. Mu Feiren took a deep breath and looked at Gu Jingze and Lin Che who were already far away. It's fine. I can take care of this myself. I do want to meet her and see how she looks like now. What kind of face does a disgusting person like this have to continue living on this earth? Shen Yoren asked, What's going to happen? Tell us. We can help you. Otherwise, we'll just look her up ourselves and deal with her personally. Mu Feiren said, I'm worried that if we provoke her, she would reveal Yunyan's existence. I don't want Yunyan to get hurt. This kind of person can do anything for the sake of money. Shen Yoren still wanted to speak, but Mu Feiren said to her, It's okay, don't worry. I still have a trump card in my hands. It's not for certain yet who is going to win this time. Shen Yoren heard this and could only nod her head. On the way home, Shen Yoren thought about it and said to Chen Yucheng, Everyone thinks that she's the queen. Who knew that a queen would have her struggles as well? Chen Yucheng replied, That is why you are lucky to have met me and avoided a situation like hers. Yeah, I'm lucky. Life may be very normal, but I'm still happy. So start counting your blessings and serve me well. Get lost. You have so many maids and you want me to serve you? What is the point of having a wife if not to serve me? Ha, you have to serve me well first before I serve you. Otherwise, don't think you can take advantage of me. Everyone still thought that she married into a family that was not suited for her. They thought that it would be tragic for her. Rumors outside said that the family was waiting to laugh at her and that the Chen parents did not like her. Rumors said that she was a slave in the family and it was so humiliating. Rumors even said that to produce some children for the Chen family, she went through artificial insemination and gave birth to twins. Chapter 799. This woman actually appeared again. But it actually was not that scary. She also had an enjoyable life at home. Of course, this was also because Chen Yucheng treated her well and supported her. Now that she had 2 sons, she didn't have to see anyone's face. Thus, in comparison, it was much simpler for her. Lin Che could not return to her own place. She was immediately taken to the Gu residence. Lin Che was still complaining that she didn't want to come here. Gu Jingze, on the other hand, was very logical. This place is big and the maids are bored. If not for yourself, think about others. You may live comfortably but others may not. Furthermore, your back is aching so you definitely need people to look after you. I only slept on the ground for one night which led to my backache. It can't be that serious. Okay, then again, don't I need to make it up to you? Well, this is your compensation. Gu Jingze took out something for Lin Che to see. Lin Che rested her back against a firm pillow. She took some thick documents written in multiple languages from him. What is this? Lin Che. He grabbed Lin Che's hand and said, "This is my compensation for you. 1% shares of the Gu Industries. Keep it." Lin Che was truly stunned. 1% of the Gu Industries. This wasn't just any company, it was the Gu Industries. No outsiders could guess how much this company was worth. How could he? This compensation is too much, she said as she looked at Gu Jingze. How could she dare to accept it? Gu Jingze's serious expression made her unable to reject it. He slowly held her hand, looked at her, and said, "It's no big deal. Didn't you say that it has to prevent me from abandoning you again? How can I dare to abandon you now? If I do that, I would lose so much money. I'm definitely keeping you for the rest of your life. When you get old and you don't want it anymore, you can pass the shares to our son, right? Isn't this plan well thought out? After making one round, it will still be part of the Gu family." Oh, Lin Che could not resist laughing. She looked at Gu Jingze and said, "But they all said that the Gu family's wealth is immeasurable. If I own 1% of it, isn't that a lot of money?" Gu Jingze said, "Not really. They are talking about the Gu family and not the Gu Industries, which is an organization with assets and companies that are still countable. Gu Industries is a subset of the Gu family's wealth. Besides Gu Industries, the family still has many other businesses and assets. Also that means that what I have won't be a significant part of the Gu family?" Lin Che asked. Gu Jingze tapped her nose. "So greedy. You have the Gu family's biggest asset and that is me. I'm the master of the family now. What else do you want?" Lin Che said, "I take what I can get. He, but if I take this and the Gu family knows, they'll definitely come after you." Lin Che did not complain anymore. He gave it to her anyway and she was not going to give it away. What he said was right. When their child grew up, she would still be returning it to the Gu family. Gu Jingze replied, "It's part of my own shares so they don't need to know. You don't have to worry about it. Alright, after you sign the papers, the lawyer will transfer it to you. You don't have to do anything." Lin Che was still in shock. Her hand shivered when she signed it. However, Gu Jingze smiled plainly as he looked at Lin Che. This girl was so easily distracted by a change in topic. Was she not complaining about going back to his house now? That was his aim. Once she was here, she was not going to go anywhere. She was not willing to and he had to find a way. Although they could live anywhere, the facilities here were more complete. It was also a lot more convenient. Lin Che had to go out in the afternoon and Gu Jingze could not stop her. He could only chauffeur her out. Lin Che was going to sign a contract with the producer in preparation for the official filming which was going to commence soon. They agreed to meet on this day. Although her back ached, she still had to head out. Yu Minmin was already at the venue. She looked at Lin Che and said, "When you go in later, you might meet someone you know." "Someone I know?" Lin Che was very puzzled. Yu Minmin asked, "You meet so many people in this circle. Is it strange to meet someone you know here?" Well, no, it's just that your expression made me a little confused. You don't look right. Yu Minmin smiled plainly and remained mysterious. She led Lin Che in. The director approached them and said to Lin Che, "We have been waiting for you." This production was backed by a very huge investment company that mainly invested in this genre of film. Thus, there were also other staff members around busy at work. Lin Che and the director chatted as they talked. When the door to the lift opened, there stood a woman in high heels and a thin, tight dress. Her shoulders were exposed and she carried a classic Dior clutch. She was dolled up from head to toe and was very attractive. Her dazzling eyes looked right at them and her lips curled in a cold smirk. That sarcastic look was really. Lin Che took a close look and suddenly realized that this person was Yang Lingxin. What was she doing here? Didn't Gu Jingze get rid of her? Lin Che thought that she would never see her again because anybody taken away by Gu Jingze would have been met with a cruel fate. However, she was actually right in front of her eyes once again. Furthermore, she still looked so arrogant. Lin Che, why, are you shocked to see me? Yeah, even I'm shocked that I could still be in front of you and talk to you face to face. Lin Che, do you know how special this feels? However, she walked over and looked at Lin Che. This time, it's a fair fight. I have everything that you have and I also have everything that you don't have. Yang Lingxin really waited for this day for too long. Thus, her smile was clearly filled with excitement. Lin Che replied, "Yeah. When you left that time, I really thought that I wouldn't see you again." "How did you leave that time?" "Oh, I remember. You were dragged away from right in front of me." "Where were you dragged off to?" "I really don't know because I honestly can't be bothered to find out such a trivial matter." "Now that you're back, what do you want this time? How do you want to be dragged away from me?" Yang Lingxin did not expect Lin Che to insult her so directly. When she thought about the humiliation back then, her heart still raged. Back then, she was dragged away. After she was dragged away, Gu Jingze simply used bribery and sentenced her to life imprisonment. She could not start over for the rest of her life. She also thought that she would die in prison. However, she had an opportunity to be released from prison. Once she fought so hard to be out, she changed her image. She scoffed at Lin Che. "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm Yang Lin. I don't know who's that person you're talking about." She changed her name. She was not Yang Lingxin now. She was Yang Lin. Chapter 800. A small appearance made a big impact before her comeback. Yang Lin grunted and walked past her. As she walked, she spoke in a voice that was particularly threatening but light. "Nice to meet you, Senior Lin Che. Let's wait and see." After that, Yang Lin strutted off in her high heels, looking very sultry. That young girl in the past was already long gone. Lin Che watched and shook her head. She really did not expect this. However, she was extremely speechless at the same time. Was Yang Lin still thinking about taking revenge? She scoffed coldly. At the side, Yu Minmin nudged her. "Are you shocked?" Lin Che waved her hand dismissively. "There's nothing to be shocked about. Every dog has its day and one day, it'll be hers. It's a small world after all. I'm just curious about what she went through." Yu Minmin said, "I only met her once previously backstage at an event. She also threatened me and said that we would wait and see. She even said that she was able to come back alive and she was no longer afraid of anything. I asked around and heard that she was locked up in prison. This dark history is of course known to many in this circle. However, she changed her image, name, and background to a completely different person. Thus, there isn't really any proof of this dark past." Lin Che said, "It looks like her resentment is really deep." "Why, are you afraid?" Yu Minmin asked. Lin Che shook her head. "There's nothing to be afraid of. There is always a solution to a problem. I'm not someone who would be easily shaken by her mere words." Yu Minmin said, "All right. Actually, she hadn't been having it easy and she barely made it out alive to be where she is now. She should also be treasuring everything she has now. She wouldn't butt heads with you for no reason. Only someone who has nothing to lose would fight with their life. She's starting to be on the rise. She wouldn't do that to herself." "How many shows has she filmed?" Lin Che asked. Yu Minmin said, "She just filmed 2 dramas. She was the second female in the first one. In the second one, she jumped to become the first. It's a crossover drama and it's rather popular. It's being talked about a lot now, and at the same time, she just had a rumor with a male singer. Now, she has yet another rumor with a young guy. She is constantly being talked about. Lin Che replied, alright, I haven't been keeping up with the news. Yeah, you haven't updated your Weibo in a long time. Something is going on later. We'll go to a cocktail party. You can show your face briefly and we'll leave. Tomorrow, there will be news about you wanting to make a comeback. We'll strike a pose and then find a chance to make a comeback properly. Lin Che said, yeah. We'll stick to your arrangement then. At night, Lin Che did not go home. After signing the contract, she attended a Big Shots cocktail party with Yu Minmin. The cocktail party was a post-conference event that took place during the day. This international big shot always attracted lots of attention from celebrities every time he came to this country for a press conference. Many celebrities who were invited would attend both the press conference and cocktail party. This was the charm of a big shot. It was as if mingling with a big shot would naturally lead to a celebrity's rise in value. Actually, Lin Che believed that a celebrity's rise in value had no relation to mingling with big shots. Before Lin Che arrived, she received a demonstration. At night, Peng Yu posted a selfie on his Weibo, saying that she was going to a cocktail party. The clothes in his selfie were from the latest collection from Dior. Everyone immediately understood what Peng Yu meant. She was officially invited. Thus, she could wear the latest products to attend the event. This is because every time Dior had a press conference, they would select a few celebrities from within the country to be ambassadors. The media also received the announcement. The company released a statement that praised Peng Yu to high ends. It said that she was now the most popular star in the country and she was the absolute successor to Mu Feiren in her golden years. Nobody else would compare to Peng Yu. It was even hinted at the end that nobody should compare her with those other expired celebrities anymore. Expired stars. Wasn't it Lin Che whom people kept comparing Peng Yu to? Lin Che read the statement and was amused. She felt that she had not been completely famous yet and she was already categorized as an expired celebrity. Yu Minmin looked at Lin Che. Ah well, who would have thought that Peng Yu would be invited to be an ambassador this year? I overlooked this and never heard about this. Lin Che looked at Yu Minmin. It's okay. Those who are capable have nothing to fear. It doesn't mean that I can't go anymore if she is going. She pressed Yu Minmin's hand reassuringly, don't worry. If I can't even handle one Peng Yu, then I'm afraid I shouldn't be making a comeback. I should go back home and look after my kid instead. Yu Minmin replied, of course, I have faith in you. A little starlet wants to compete with you when she has only just been popular for a few years. That's impossible. At night, at the cocktail party, Qin Wanwan was invited as a celebrity. However, she was no longer the same actor who could summon the winds and rain as she wanted. Nobody cared about her when she entered now. She could only chat with a few people she was familiar with. However, everybody already knew her character. She was two-faced and nobody made personal conversations with her anymore. Someone saw Qin Wanwan and asked, did you see the news about Peng Yu today? How did she get selected as an ambassador this year? Qin Wanwan said, humph. I wonder how much money she paid to be in. If I had to say, even Yang Lin would make a stronger contender than her. No matter what you say, she can do that. Hey, look, Peng Yu is here. Everyone looked over and indeed saw that Peng Yu had arrived. The car stopped outside and she just alighted. She was clad in Dior's new clothes and the reporters swarmed towards her. Qin Wanwan remembered that she used to be like that too, but now. Peng Yu smiled at the reporters. Hello. Who picked the ambassador this time? Is there going to be an endorsement contract? Do you have anything to say regarding why you were selected? Peng Yu's smile was sweet but hinted pride. She appeared like a big shot with a big shot's temper. She looked as if she was very high and mighty. The host contacted us and we then agreed. With regards to how they chose me, I think it might be because my poise and looks are better suited to their products and so on. However, just then, everyone suddenly saw another luxury car pull up behind. Everyone saw the Maybach limousine stop at the entrance. It was a brand new car that looked extremely eye-catching. However, the person who stepped out of it left everyone more surprised. Someone exclaimed, Lin Che. Quick, look, it's Lin Che. The people immediately rushed over in a frenzy. Peng Yu, who had many reporters gathered around her previously, now had not even a single camera pointed at her. Because everyone already began to surround Lin Che.